Some people break loudly, others break invisibly, still doing the dishes, still answering emails, still telling everyone they're fine. Burnout begins long before collapse. It seeps into the edges of your days, thinning your capacity until every obligation feels slightly too heavy. This episode enters that silent place, the space where you're functioning but unsteady. Marcus Aurelius knew this world intimately. Despite being emperor, he wrote in Meditations not to celebrate his power, but to stabilize his own trembling mind. He reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. In the quiet of his tent during war, he was simply a human being trying to stay intact. For him, responsibility was not glamorous. It was a weight he carried carefully, acknowledging that even the strongest person has limits, and that honesty is where we begin. Burnout in modern life doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock. It accumulates. You get up each day a little more tired than before. You meet every request with a small internal flinch. Tasks you used to complete effortlessly now require negotiation with yourself. You say yes out of habit, out of fear, out of the belief that if you don't do it, no one will. Slowly, responsibility becomes armor-heavy, rigid, isolating. People start to see you as dependable, reliable, unshakable, and although part of you appreciates the trust, another part grows weary of carrying so much without rest. The world reinforces this pattern. Productivity is praised. Busyness is admired. Enduring silently is mistaken for strength. You're encouraged to stretch yourself thinner, hold more, bend farther. Eventually, you begin to fear what might happen if you stepped back, even briefly. The burnout becomes self-perpetuating. You keep going, not because you're strong, but because you're afraid of what stopping might reveal. Marcus Aurelius wrestled with an older version of the same dilemma, immense responsibility paired with undeniable humanity. He could not resign, he could not disappear, yet he refused to abandon the inner work of understanding the mind under pressure. He realized that burnout grows when we confuse our identity with our obligations, when we believe we are the pillar rather than someone temporarily leaning into a demanding season. Marcus wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive." Not as naive positivity, but as a recalibration and attempt to see life beyond its pressures. He recognized that the weight of responsibility becomes unbearable, not because of the tasks themselves, but because of the inner story, the belief that you alone must prevent collapse. Marcus knew this narrative was a trap, one that shrinks your world until pressure becomes the only lens through which you see yourself. His insight was subtle. Responsibility is heavy, yes, but it becomes lighter when you stop gripping it, as if the universe depends on you personally. To apply this in our own lives, we have to examine not just what we carry, but how we carry it. Many people live in a state of bracing, anticipating disappointment, preparing to compensate for others, rehearsing potential crises before they occur. This internal vigilance exhausts us far more than our actual tasks. Marcus's approach offers a gentler posture, engaging fully without fusing your worth to the outcome. You can show up without clinging. You can care deeply without self-erasure. You can support others without hollowing yourself out to do it. Burnout dissolves not when responsibilities vanish, but when you stop believing that every imperfect outcome reflects on your character, when you stop playing the role of silent guarantor. Practically, this looks like loosening the internal narrative that says, if I don't do it, everything will fall apart. It means learning to share weight, to trust others, to set boundaries without apology. It means remembering that steadiness requires softness, not hardness, presence, not tension. There is a moment in healing burnout when you realize exhaustion is not a personal flaw, but a message. It signals that your inner architecture needs reinforcement, that the way you've been living is unsustainable. The turning point comes when you stop asking, how much more can I take? And begin asking, what happens if I stop carrying this alone? Marcus understood obstacles as teachers. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Burnout, often dismissed as weakness, becomes a direction, an invitation to soften, to recalibrate your expectations, to release the fantasy that strength requires perpetual endurance. When this insight lands, something shifts. Responsibility becomes something you navigate, not something you merge with. You begin to see that you can be committed without being consumed. You can be dependable without dissolving. And slowly, the pressure that once felt claustrophobic begins to loosen. You create space inside yourself again, space for breath, for rest, for quiet humanness. Integrating this lesson isn't dramatic, it's intimate. It begins with noticing the moments your shoulders tense, your breath shortens, your thoughts race ahead into imaginary disasters. It involves catching yourself in the act of overfunctioning, of stepping into roles no one actually asked you to fill, of saying yes to avoid guilt, rather than from genuine willingness. Marcus's philosophy invites a gentler rhythm, to act with integrity but without self-punishment, to meet obligations with presence rather than dread, to grant yourself the same compassion you instinctively offer others. Over time, this becomes a practice. You begin to delegate small weights. You set boundaries without rehearsing justifications. You rest before collapse. You allow people to experience the consequences of their own choices. You stop performing invincibility. Gradually, you shift from being the person who must hold everything together to being someone who participates fully, sincerely, without losing themselves under the burden. The truth remains steady. No one can hold everything together indefinitely. Not you, not even an emperor. Marcus Aurelius admitted the strain openly in the only place he felt safe to do so, his journal. He reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This strength is not about carrying more, it's about carrying differently. It's about recognizing that much of what exhausts us is the belief that we must be constant, flawless, perpetually available. When you release that belief, burnout transforms from a verdict into guidance. You are not failing, you are being asked to return to yourself. And when you do, the emotional scaffolding you've been holding alone begins to rearrange. You reconnect with the part of you that remembers life is not solely about obligation. There is room for joy, for rest, for communion, for simple presence. So as we close, take a slow breath. Let your shoulders drop. Remember that your worth is not measured by how perfectly you carry the world. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to let some things fall that were never yours to hold in the first place. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe for more videos like this.